I'd like to call the meeting to order now. And if we can stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I can have a motion to accept tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. David?
Second.
And second?
Second.
Maria? All in favor?
Aye.
Is that a- Great. So now I'm going to administer the oath of office to our newly elected board members.
So you just, why don't we go over?
Head over that way?
I'll do
Yeah.
David first.
Ladies first.
During you're coming back.
Just whomever is nearest, hold the mic to make sure Pauline is captured on
Stand.
audio, please.
Great. David, you're right here, if you can read that, otherwise I print it out.
I, David Graber, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of trustee of the Irvington Board of Education according to the best of my ability.
Great. You can sign there. Congratulations, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Pauline.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for serving a second term.
Absolutely. Pleased to follow in fine footsteps.
And our newest trustee,
I, Erin Bernstein. I, Erin Bernstein, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of trustee of the Irvington Board of Education, according to the best of my ability.
you sign here. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Erin. Thank you for stepping up to serve the community. We appreciate it, and we look forward to working with you.
Me too. Thank you.
Now, we are going to elect the president of the board for this coming year, 1920. And so if I could have a nomination for the president?
I nominate Brian Friedman.
Is there a second?
I second that nomination.
Before we're just procedurally, so Mrs. Cashkin nominated Mr. Friedman. Are there any other nominations?
No other nominations? So then can we have a second, please?
I second that.
David, thank you. So Maria, Brian, and David. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have some musical chairs that the.
Well, first, I just want to say, Brian, congratulations. I know you're going to be a superb president of the board, and you have a great team behind you. We all look to support your term as president, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Musical chairs?
Musical chairs begin,
Yes.
and then you will be sworn in and take over the meeting from there.
Successful terms, sir.
Office, please.
I don't know if I should wait because I can do that.
I, Brian Friedman, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of President of the Irvington Board of Education according to the best of my ability.
Sign here. And congratulations.
All right.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So you pick up with the vice president.
Yep.
So is there a nomination for first vice president?
I nominate Maria Kashkin.
Are there any other nominations? Second?
Second the nomination.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
You don't have to move your seat.
No musical chairs for you.
So we have an oath, Pauline? All right, so let's wait for that. And while we're waiting, Brian, one of the beauties of being president, here's your signature folder for tonight.
It's a big one.
It's a doozy because of the time of year.
Ah.
Yes.
Okay. I, Maria Kashkin, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of First Vice President of the Irvington Board of Education according to the best of my ability.
So do we have a nomination for the second vice president?
I nominate Maura Geddes for second vice president.
Any other nominations? Do we have a second?
Second.
Quick.
All in favor?
Aye.
So musical chairs again.
Ready? I'm moving, I'm sliding. I get to slide.
Now Beth and Aaron get to share the mic.
I, Maura Geddes, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Second Vice President of the Irvington Board of Education according to the best of my ability.
Yeah, I called for it because typically at the end of
We
the
now
meeting,
have,
I ask for
yeah.
The line of authority.
So this, congratulations to all the officers, and certainly, just as Mr. Hanna indicated, you have a wonderful team of trustees to work with, and the administration looks forward to collaborating with you as a team and as individuals throughout the course of this upcoming school year. The election then results in a new line of authority for the school district Board of Education. And this is beyond the election. Of course, we have Brian, bless you, as president, first vice president, and Maria, second vice president, Maura. And then those that follow would be in order of experience then in time on the board. So Mr. Hanna would be followed by Mr. Graber, Ms. Proper, and Mrs. Bernstein. So I said it brings you to item 5.1, Mr. President.
So I guess this is a time where we have the opportunity for comments from the community. If there's anyone who wants to make a comment, you can go to the microphone. Please remember to keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Okay, seeing no comments, we'll move on to item 6, which is the committee and liaison appointments for the upcoming year.
So, Brian, if I may, there may be a modification to what's listed here in the agenda. If we could document that, and I would say
Sure.
just for matter of record, committees truly serve at the will of the Board of Education, with the exception of the audit committee, which the board serves as a committee as a whole. That said, there isn't a resolution required for the approval of this, but this would be the commitments throughout the year, and of course, as necessary, there can be modifications. So there is a correction to be made, I understand?
There's a few. So in terms of the two villages, I'll take the place of Morrow for both of them. And on the Westchester Putnam School Board Association, I'll also participate as the liaison. And then Morrow will, actually, it'll only be David Graber as the Booster Club liaison.
And on this list, I noticed the audit committee is not listed on here.
Yeah, so that's fine. So Pauline, just please note, under committee, beneath policy, please add audit committee, and maybe the committee of a whole.
Oh, wait, did we get the IEF one? Is that correct?
Are we good to move on from committees? And we can certainly make modifications, as I referenced before, to the extent needed.
Right, so now we have the appointment of the
Brian, can I just
district
ask
clerk.
one question? I know we bounced around the finance committee. Just curious.
Excuse me?
Bounced around the idea of a finance committee. I'm just curious if that's something we're going to visit during the year.
We'll be discussing that during the year.
During, this summer.
But I think there's a few trustees who are interested in having that conversation, so I would support having that opportunity to talk about it when the chance is.
Yeah, I'll join Michael on that. Okay.
Two.
Okay, so it's an actual resolution, so you have to ask for a motion for 7.1.
So we need a motion to approve 7.1, the appointment of the district clerk.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So now Pauline will have to come forward, and Brian, you'll have to administer her oath of office.
I, Pauline Davies, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of District Clerk of Irvington Union Free School District, according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, Pauline. So 7.2 is another.
Yep. Just waiting for Pauline to sit, I was waiting for Pauline to sit down.
Yeah.
So now we also need a motion to approve the appointment of the other district officers listed in 7.2.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So with that, I would just like to make a note that our district clerk, Pauline, will administer the oath of office to these other district officers within 30 days.
So now we move to Section 8, which is the consent agenda. And before we move to vote, are there any questions or any issues related to any of the items up here on the consent agenda?
There's one item that I'm going to raise. So when we look at item 9.1, other required annual appointments, and then if we come down to item 10, I would ask that the board modify that by striking my name and having Dr. Kaur serve as the sole Title 7, Title 9 Sexual Harassment Compliance Officer with no additional salary. And I do want to provide context to that, that it was discovered that it's not advisable for a superintendent to serve in such a capacity. Historically, we have had 2 folks serve in that role, and with some of the transitions in district, I just thought I would step in to help. But now with that guidance, we're going to have Dr. Kaur serve in that capacity, and as we round out our administrative team in the coming weeks, we'll look to appoint a deputy to support Dr. Kaur in this role.
Any other comments or questions before we move to vote on the consent agenda? Okay, hearing nothing, can I get a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Nay and abstain.
Any abstain?
Abstaining.
You have that, Pauline? So I would just note a shift in the structure of our agenda this year and helping to try to streamline the flow of business. We actually have, rather than adding a list of items that would be regular district business or annual district business that would sit outside of the business of the reorganization, we actually have piggybacked essentially two agendas together. So in a shift from past practice, item number 12 on the agenda is a motion to adjourn the reorganization meeting and open a regular meeting. So we shift in focus, but really it was just for that clarity and the purpose of business. So, Brian, with that would be a separate motion.
So can I get a motion to adjourn the reorg meeting and open the regular meeting?
Motion to adjourn?
So, motion to adjourn,
So moved.
No, second.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, just to clarify, it was a motion to adjourn one and to
And
open
open the
the other. So consistent with the verbiage in 12.1.
Yeah, well, so we have another opportunity for community comment, if anyone would like to avail themselves of that. Seeing no takers, I believe we have a couple guests from the village to come and speak to us about the goings-on with the Town Hall Theater. So we invite Larry Schaffer and Greg Allen to come forward and please present.
Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
These are just those excerpt copies. I don't
Great.
know, you're not going through it at all tonight. I just want to.
So, great, that's great. Thank you. So, Mr. Schopfer and I, and as you can imagine, are in regular communication, and I would like to take this opportunity before Larry and Greg begin this evening to thank you for your ongoing support on behalf of everyone in the school district. There is no question that the Village of Irvington, you as the administrator, and the village's staff have and continue to be tremendous partners and advocates for the work of the school district. So thank you for everything that you do for us.
Thank you, and the feeling's mutual. We have a very good working relationship with Chris and your staff, and very happy for that. Not always the case.
So that said, the board, some may recall, if we go back, I would believe 2 years ago, there was conversation where we were visited by Larry and others from the village to talk about potential plans for improvements to the Town Hall Theater and the surrounding area. So Larry wanted to come on behalf of the village and joined by Greg, who is the theater director, to provide the board with a brief update on the process. In advance of this meeting, I provided the board with a link to the comprehensive report that was published on the village website. Thank you, and Larry, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so really, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the few minutes that we'll take of your time. So as Chris said, we were here a couple of years ago talking about a concept. There was some positive feedback from that meeting, so we pressed forward with the idea of possibly utilizing some school property between Town Hall and the Main Street School to establish a new entrance into the theater. And the feasibility study goes into lots of detail as to why, and many of you that visit there probably know why. But as I said, the response was positive here, so we went ahead and finished up the feasibility study. The good news from our standpoint is that the feasibility study gave us a positive indication. It is possible, and it would be a tremendous asset to the theater. But what it also revealed is that there are some synergies between the project and the school district, given that it's on the school property, of course. And we would have to work through some of those details. But suffice it to say that the entrance to the theater would provide a safe and direct access for the teachers and students in the Main Street School to access programs in the theater, which I know there are throughout the year. But in addition, there's also an outdoor plaza area, which is depicted on some of the renderings and in some more detail in the feasibility study, that can be used as an outdoor classroom or just general program space for the students, either of the Main Street School or even a different school. So we thought that that was interesting as well. And again, all these have to be fleshed out. This is just feasibility, not even, I mean, it's barely schematic design, you know, when you look through it. And we also think that there's a very good possibility to provide ADA accessible access to your gymnasium. I think there's a way of looking at our building and a facility and an elevator that'll be in that building and have it connect down to your lower level where the gymnasium is, so that maybe is a help as well. That's where we are. I think from our standpoint, we wanted to make sure that we're kind of dotting the I's and crossing the T's and keeping you in the process. We didn't want the report, which was presented to the trustees last month, we didn't want that out there and the school board members and the school staff wondering, well, you know, they're making all these plans and haven't kind of updated us. So this is your little update, and happy to take questions. Any questions offline, of course, always in contact with Chris, but so the next step. So Greg's here, you know, this is not happening next year, I assure you. It's probably a $4.5 or $5 million project if the full project is done, maybe even more, depending on how it goes. The board, you know, I'm not going to speak as to, you know, exactly what actions our board's going to take. I know that they're willing to commit some funds. They're probably not willing to commit $4.5 or $5 million. So Greg has a very dedicated group of volunteers that he works with, and they are going to be busy trying to raise money.
Right, that's what, in the feasibility study, it talks about the next phase. The next phase is fundraising. So we have a Friends of the Theater that we've spent the past 2 years also getting that going. So we have a 501c3 arm of the theater. And within that, we're going to start creating a committee with probably 2 chairs that's going to actually chair specifically for this fundraising effort. And so we can go after private donations. We've worked on some grants, but getting grants for capital campaigns is not always easy. So we definitely will be working the next 2 years in raising funds. There's another page on there that talks about the phase after that, and as Larry said, that's where we get into the design phase. So what you have here, it may not look exactly what you see on those pages. That's just the feasibility of what it could look like. But we're excited to take it to that next level to raise funds and like you said, to really work with the school as we go through this too.
So certainly if you have any questions now, we may be able to answer them, we may not, but we'll be able to get you answers. And then going forward, of course, anytime, Chris can pick up the phone.
So, questions, anyone?
I have a few questions. So these drawings that are in here in the 66-page document, that's just kind of loose renderings, the intent is not to move the existing walkway for the students currently?
That's the way it's drawn, and let me just clarify something, because it is a little confusing, and I think some people involved in this effort, can get caught up in looking at the pretty pictures. We did a lot of work developing those pictures to make them look nice. That's really for the fundraising part of it. We kind of needed that.
No,
But it doesn't mean,
Right.
really, it's barely a schematic drawing, so that means it has, the design development has not even taken place, you know what I mean?
So conceptually, the idea is to leave the existing walkway kind of where it is. So next steps is fundraising. At what point, how does this logistically work I'm assuming the board can't sign off on this until actual drawings are made, so we could see what's what. Is that
Sure.
correct?
Oh, I would assume so, yeah. That's why we're
Okay.
not even working on the legal aspects of this.
No, I'm just kind of wondering, you know, bigger picture, timeline, things like that, and not holding you to 2 years, 10 years, or anything like that. I just want to make sure that there is, because conceptually, I think you've heard, I think this is a wonderful idea. I just want to make sure that our, you know, how the students go from one building to the other, you know, part of it is in the bond proposal, which I know we could change and morph, you know, given this project. And then logistically, how does that work? Because if this is on school property with SED compliance, I mean, I'm assuming it still has to go to the state for approval, right?
So there's a couple different phases to this, and I'll try to address it and invite Carol to jump in if I misspeak, but if you want to supplement my comments. A few different steps to look at. The first phase is looking at our own capital project, which you referenced. And we've already apprised our architectural firm, H2M, of this project. And as they get into the design phase of the repairs and enhancements of the current covered walkway that goes from the Main Street School building to the gymnasium, there will be interface with the village and your architectural firm to discuss some logistics associated with that, so we don't spend money that may go away eventually with some renovations. As the village progresses in its plans and starts to realize the wonderful funds that you are going to raise, Greg, then there would be conversation that would be engaged on multiple fronts between both boards, and there may be opportunity for a joint board meeting to discuss logistics. But leading up to that, there would be engagement of the legal representation for both the village and the school district, because there's a couple different approaches that could be taken. One would probably be looking at redrawing some property lines or granting the village access to that particular property. There was one such agreement that was granted a number of years ago, giving the village some property directly along the side of Town Hall. If you can picture where that driveway currently is, I believe in that area. So there would be an agreement along those lines that would be drawn up and negotiated with our attorneys to navigate process with SED. If in fact the plans do materialize where there is connection of facilities, there would be a component that would have to go through state ed approval because there would be construction within school property. I think this would actually, aside from the timelines and the arduous approval process that we have to go through as an educational agency, I believe that SED would look quite favorably at this because it would be not only enhancing safety and security by providing some secure access from one building to the next, but importantly, as Larry mentioned, it would provide for ADA compliance, which the compliance that we have today, unfortunately, is that you go out to the street and walk around and enter through a handicap accessible doorway on Ferris Street. So that would provide for direct access from one building to the other, potentially through an elevator.
So theoretically, we would sell a portion of the property to the village, is that
There
what you're
would be
saying?
a land agreement, I don't know if I would
Okay.
use the words a sale, but
Like
there
an
would be an
easement
agreement.
of some sort?
Yeah.
Got it, okay.
Does it
okay.
require a vote
Of the community?
by the community?
If we do it as an easement, probably not. But if we do it as a sale, then we would, but
Okay.
Okay. Okay. And then that way, you would not, this project wouldn't have to go through SED approval. The bulk of it, just if anything touches our Main Street School.
To the extent that it would affect our physical school building.
yeah, I mean, they wouldn't have domain over their village building, but that's where the lawyers have to figure out who owns what and how that works. And that's why I don't want to commit to answering that because, you know, until we see the structure, I wouldn't know. But, I mean, if we're improving the walkway, that's ours. But other than that, no.
Okay.
I mean, we fully recognize this is way preliminary. We
Yeah.
just wanted.
Yeah.
It's a little too early to
We-
know.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
no,
I was just
absolutely.
wondering the process.
Yeah, and we just wanted you to have the courtesy at least to know where we are on this and not, you know, be in a vacuum, us off on our own trying to raise millions of dollars and wondering what's going on.
Well, I wish you luck with the fundraising.
Yes, we all wish you luck on that.
Thank you, yeah.
And I would say with the strong relationship that we referenced in the ongoing communication that we have, surely there will be updates and we will see the fundraising campaign, and as it begins to materialize and it starts to become a more timely reality, that then we will begin process and discussions in and around the architectural design and the legal process and engage the boards as appropriate.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of the night.
So I guess we'll move now to 14.2.
Yes. So Pauline, 14.2, do you have the slide and answer?
People can come.
Yeah, well, they have great events, they just have a crummy entrance. I think they would, watch out Pleasantville, they would come.
That's what I'm saying. It could be, it's got similar chops.
That's right.
So good evening from this side of the table. So each year, we take a few minutes to talk about, I would say each year, I think this is probably the third year of this type of conversation. But we take a few minutes, and not an in-depth dive, but a few minutes to think about some of the focal points for the district work for next year. And has become our real work and focus for the past couple of years is really grounding everything that we do in our strategic plan, which we've entitled our Vision for Tomorrow. And in doing so, it contains a series of strategic objectives. So here's a list of the objectives, and all the work that we continue to do in the district, and community would have seen this consistently referenced through lots of the work this year, beginning with our goal presentations in September, leading all the way through our budget process, other discussions, and of course our capital projects. We ground all of our work in identifying where the linkage is to our strategic objectives, which is really a good grounding post for us to make sure that we're always on focus and target. So in doing so, when we think about where we are, we always kind of categorize our work as a school district into two larger areas. The first is thinking about where we are in and around instruction and curriculum. And we maintain that commitment to always looking to making sure we're enhancing student learning experiences, supporting the growth of our teachers, and always improving programs and opportunities for the children. Then where do we sit from an operational focus? And this year, clearly, we're going to be continuing to look to the future as we did earlier this year with our long-range planning discussion and presentation. But the capital project is going to be an essential objective for the district on an operational side. When we think about where we are instructionally, the board and community, I would hope, have come to know and learn that we have overarching goals that we focus on. The first two are ones that have been long-standing and focus our work for a number of years. And more recently, we've added a focus to increase the use of data. So the first really focuses on instructional practices that elevate student thinking and understanding. And if we go back and think about so many of the presentations and discussions that we've had in this room over recent years, you can point to countless examples there. Another focus that has been and continues to be ongoing is our work in and around assessment to ensure that we're measuring students' content knowledge, skills, and their dispositional thinking. And in doing so, that is work that's ever evolving, seeking alignment within our curriculum, and making sure that we are truly assessing what we're teaching and teaching what we believe we need to assess. And then finally is our increased use of data to inform instruction and planning. We took some steps as seen in the end-of-year presentations, the student performance report, and both the elementary and secondary school presentations, where data is taking a center point in a lot of our work to inform not only decision-making, but teaching and learning on a consistent basis. We're upping the ante and taking some bigger steps forward with that, which is beginning this summer with some significant work with staff members in our school district through summer curriculum work. To dig in a little bit more deeply, we have broader objectives. I want to say that this certainly isn't the limit to what we're doing. These are the highlighted areas that we know coming out of the past school year, the 18-19 school year, areas that are our target objectives that link back to the strategic plan. So it is the development and implementation of an elementary world language program, and to do so with great success. The finalization and implementation of a K-12 guidance plan, which we look forward to having more conversation as this year progresses. An update of our technology plan, which unfortunately we had to put on hold this year. Curriculum development and alignment, and using social studies and science as an example for those areas where there are big shifts in curriculum. But that work continues in all subject areas, content areas, but I highlight that because of current shifts that are underway and work that's being led in the district by Dr. Kaur and of course our school level leaders. Alignment and development of assessments as referenced before. An increased, and the word here that I should stand out to you is systemic use of data district-wide here in the district, and the collection and analysis of data K-12. So in doing so, you started to see windows into that work. Now I want you to focus on collection and analysis K-12, and I want you to think of the word systemic, and that's the focus and shift that we're taking next year, which you're going to see examples through process this year. Some may surface during budget. Certainly items will surface in goal presentation at the beginning of the year, identifying some objective, but most certainly when we get to student performance report and end of year presentations, you'll see plenty of examples of that. I think also supporting that will be the presentation of our student performance report earlier in our workshop cycle in the school year. Social and emotional learning, as the board and community is aware, is a primary focus for all of us here in the school district. We certainly look forward to some opportunity to not only articulate the work that we're doing this year and identifying and naming how we're doing things systemically again, so looking at a K-12 continuum of teaching and learning support systems that are in place. But we also anticipate opportunity to come forward to the board as identified in the budget process with a recommendation to look to enhance support services, potentially through an additional social worker at some course of the year. And we say that because we know, and it's been stated in this room, that we see a great need and believe in that. But we certainly, I say this with some caution because we have to see where we sit financially and the ability to be able to support that. I would say that another area and a conversation that is going to be, I think, newer to Irvington is that idea of equity and access for all learners. So if I look at our onboard newspaper that comes out from New York State School Board Association, the cover article is talking about the amount of shifts that we're seeing in the demographics in school districts across the state. And so we know we've had transition and change here in Irvington over recent years. One example of that I've highlighted multiple times before, I'm beginning my 8th year as your superintendent, and we've seen an increase in our free and reduced lunch rates from approximately 3% to more than 9%. So that's just one lens of the transition that's happened here in Irvington. So you should really step back and think about what that means to us as a community. Certainly we have more students, families that are in need of financial assistance, so we've seen that grow. But at the same time, we've seen the overall wealth of our community increase. Property value, income has increased overall. So in saying that, we're looking at larger gaps, right, in socioeconomics that are present in our community. But when we say look at equity, access, there's lots of other characteristics, defining traits we could look for. So when we want to step back and we want to start to have dialogue about what that looks like in Irvington, where our needs are to make sure we're supporting, that we're being sensitive and supportive of all the needs for all of our students and making sure there's opportunity for those children to be successful when they enter the Irvington schools, regardless of socioeconomics, regardless of where they were born, regardless of race, gender identity, whatever the case may be. It's going to be a difficult conversation that we're going to start with faculty, conversation that we're going to have to bring to the community. And I really believe that's a conversation that's much bigger than the school community. But dialogue has to start somewhere, and we're going to own it here. But we're going to invite the rest of the community to the conversation as we move through this process through the course of the school year. Maximizing professional learning experience is an ongoing focus. And then after administering the school quality survey for the second time, we look for more actionable areas that we're going to be able to look to really dig into the data that we're receiving. We'll say we started dialogue today with our administrative team and starting to reflect on school-level data that they've just received, and having them begin to think about target areas and goal work for their schools for the coming year, let alone the conversation that we already had at a board and district level with the presentation last month. On the operational front, clearly the capital project stands out as one of the top priorities that's going to keep the Buildings and Grounds Committee, Carol, Gary, and myself quite busy throughout the course of the coming school year. When we think of this, there's going to be focus in and around planning and design. There's going to be plenty of opportunities for not only board engagement, but community engagement as we get into actual design and looking at facades of buildings and the like. But really the presentation and construction timelines and designs are going to be those key deliverables that the board is going to see and that are going to have real interest in monitoring. Finalizing the last two contracts that we have open, and we're very close on both of them. That is our custodial unit and our administrators association. Development of a sustainability committee. Here, clearly looking at stakeholder engagement and then identification of opportunities to enhance the work that we're doing here in our school district. Not only looking at saving funds, but to try to have less of an impact on our community and natural resources. And then, of course, with the work that we started earlier this year, continued emphasis on the long-range planning with a focus on reserve management to build up the money that we have to be able to support those future difficult times and challenges that we could face. So that said, this is another area that we will always focus. And as discussed at the meeting where we reviewed the data from the survey, we need to kind of step back a little bit and evaluate communication practices and look to see where we can make enhancements or to try to really shift some of our focus in and around the district to make sure that we're reaching stakeholders and that we're conveying the types of information that folks are interested in hearing and learning about. And then continuing to bolster our school identity and spirit. Certainly those are areas where we've seen growth and progress. We can point to many examples from school spirit wear, the use of school logo and consistent identifiers that we see that, I look at the logo right there on the screen, you see it, you think of Irvington schools now. But we have more work to do on that front, and that'll continue to be a part of what we do moving forward. So when we think about this, we think about, geez, there's a lot to be done, a lot that happens day to day in each of our schools, whether it's individually or collaboratively among our leadership team and our faculty and staff. But we have to start to think about opportunities where we have conversations and identify the objectives that we want to bring forward for conversation in the future. So I just share this as really kind of a framework that is somewhat limiting. And in doing so, we look at where there's the opportunity for discussion. So this is the framework for the district's year for board workshops and presentations. And certainly, we know every year we add a couple meetings to meet different types of needs. So as the administration, begin to work with board leadership in the coming weeks, we're going to begin to prioritize and identify how we pace different discussion topics throughout the course of the year and what those topics will be. So we look forward to that planning and sharing that information with the board and community as we kick off the new school year in September with our students and faculty. That said, we've done tremendous work here in our school district over the past 7 years that I can speak to. And in doing so, we've made great progress. We have a lot to be proud of with the programs that we've built here in the district, the level of education, the quality of experience that we afford our children. But there's also, we look at capacity, and there's times where you want to slow down. There's times where we need to be able to look to be able to not pause, but allow people to focus on that day-to-day work, improving their practice and craft in their classrooms, and work on the culture in the school building. And this is one of those years where I think we slow down a little bit and we begin to focus a little more deeply on caring for individuals and focus on what we do in and around supporting students' needs. And when we think of social emotional learning, I'm also thinking of the morale of our faculty and that school spirit component. we want to be Irvington proud, and we want to really build upon all the good work that's happened instructionally and let people enjoy the experiences that happen here in our schools on a daily basis. So there'll be a little shift in some of our focus, and there's going to be partnership with the whole administration and the board to make sure we're creating that construct where we're setting realistic expectations for ourselves, where we're being supportive of one another's work, and that we're creating an environment where kids are not only coming and getting a top quality education, but our faculty and our staff are motivated and excited to come to work on a daily basis and are proud of what we're doing in our schools. That said, Mr. President, the conversation's yours.
I turn it over to anyone else on the board who has a question or comment in the first instance.
I say this every year, same time. Just want to inject the word measurable, like I do every year this time. Nice to see in September some measurable goals that speak to, whatever the priorities that we, that you guys, just what we can go back to the community and say, this is where we were, this is where we're going, this is how we're getting there. And this is where we hope to land. Other than that, thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate it.
And I would like to add to that, kind of like a timeline of where you think some of these will happen throughout the year. I mean, some of them obviously are year-long, but for example, an update on the guidance, K-12 guidance plan. We were supposed to get something at the end
It's
of the year.
just in draft form. Do you know, no, I'm happy to share that, though. I don't want you to think, I mean, we just got a copy of it.
But look, we ran out of time. We had so many things going on at the end of the year. So when, kind of schedule different things, the technology plan, like certain things will have target dates on it and others will not.
Yeah, and I think your point is well taken, and times we're certainly busy this year, and actually, we worked with a consultant, as you'll recall from Dr. Kaur's comments throughout the year. Consultants just produced the draft of the plan, so there was a delay in process that went beyond the work here at the board and administrative level. So when we look to this work, we're still in the next couple weeks wrapping up the 18-19 school year, and then we kind of shift into that planning mode. And in doing so, we start to set dates and targets in and around this work. Conversation related to the guidance plan, as Dr. Kaur said, that we can certainly share a draft with the board. But we want to have broader level conversation about that work and potentially its linkage again to SEL, social emotional learning, because it doesn't stand alone. There are certain guidance functions that are separate from what we do is to support kids' social emotional well-being, but there's definite linkages. We talked about throughout our budget process and end-of-year presentations. You can look at the variety of buckets that surface, right, when we think about social emotional learning. And there was that social work component in caring for kids' mental health and supporting them through crisis and supporting families. There's the character education program, and I gotta say, we have a tremendous character education program across our schools and the work that happens. We talked about the RTI work that exists, and then woven through a lot of this in some cases and supplemental to some of this is the guidance work. So I think when we begin to look at our work and mapping out and articulating a plan in and around SEL, it is going to be bringing all these items together, looking at it holistically as a K-12 system.
Anyone else?
I do look forward, as part of our discussion around the social emotional learning and equity and access. I know that you've committed to working with a stakeholder, or students that participating in looking at the address code, and additionally, just with sort of the shift in the experiences in our schools and our desire to be able to move forward on supporting the instruction of students, that we're able to also, when it comes to students who are struggling or who face consequences because of mistakes that they've made, that we're able to reflect on how we, as a community and for those students, are addressing that. So I hope that'll be part of that conversation going forward.
Yeah, and I think, there's a part of it that I want to step out in front of there with that, Mr. Hanna, and saying that when we look at where we are and we consider our experiences, you know, as your superintendent, I'm in a position where I certainly want to say there's some time to pivot. And times have changed in a lot of ways, and kids face a lot of difficult times in their world. And if we just think back to where we were, I'll say the beginning of my tenure here in Irvington, just 8 years ago, that you think we didn't even think about vaping. We didn't think about the prevalence and the risk that that provides. That not only from a smoking type experience, but that idea of being delivery of drugs and other challenges there, and how our kids were going to have this in their face in ways that we've never seen before. So it's really changed the dynamic there. When we go back to the roundtable discussion that we had earlier this calendar year, we talked about some of the challenges that we see in supporting kids. So I certainly want to own and begin to collaborate with my administrative team in leading a shift in taking a different approach to consequence as it comes to students. When there's infractions of our code of conduct, certainly there's reason and need for there to be consequence. There's also a greater need for there to be a learning experience to support the change in behavior. We want to have a focus where we have a balance here, though. One where there's a message that's sent where we respect our maintenance of a productive school environment, that there's standards that we have to live to, and that by doing so we set example for others, and that it supports a learning environment. But at the same time, we want to step back and we want to be able to make sure that we're not having or compounding negative impacts on a kid's life. We want to make sure we're keeping kids engaged in their learning, we're supporting their social and emotional well-being, and we want to make sure that it is something that our community can accept and support all the way around. We don't, a phrase, and I don't want to go back to a child left behind, but we don't want to leave kids behind over some mistakes. We've taken great effort along the way in our work on the disciplinary front to provide lots of supports to work with children, to make sure they're getting supports, collaborating with their families. But I want that to be a little more school focused and having reflection that having more consideration around the student time that kids are out of school, and wanting to see kids in school more. And that's, there's going to be some things that you can look at simply as saying, well, a suspension may be shorter in time, but I'd also step back and say that we have to build some constructs to be able to support kids in what that role is and what those experiences may be if we're engaging kids in the school environment with additional learning around their infractions, so to speak.
And I guess just one other component that we discussed briefly, actually during the survey presentation a few weeks ago, is we also need to support our staff and faculty, and that's a part of the equation as well, that they want to be able to run a classroom without disruption, without the challenges that if there's a sense of feeling supported in that way, that's we need to keep that in mind. And I know you know that, but I just want to say it publicly so that we all remember that.
Great segue. It's a perfect opportunity for an enhanced professional learning experience. A perfect place to, I know I revisit this also every year. It'd be great to see a professional development plan that includes that component, the social emotional component, and how the staff is being supported. It's a good place to start.
Thank you for the reminder, Mr. Graber. And as I was reading, referencing my slide before, I thought, I know he's going to bring it up tonight.
What?
I wish I beat you to the punch.
I hear a segue too, so I can't not take advantage of a segue. So I'm very heartened to hear in both the trustees and the superintendent's comments and understanding of how things have changed over the last 8 years. And some things that were very innovative 8 years ago and sort of new are now more settled as best practices, and it may be a very good time to pivot and look at some of our practices in light of those developments that are now more supported by data, especially under discipline policy. So I'm very heartened to hear that. Thank you.
Anyone else? And I guess I'll make my standard pitch for data and developing a better understanding of what our data landscape looks like and what, for lack of a better word, box we're trying to build and how we're going to build that, and having a dialogue with the board over the course of the year to better understand that landscape. Thank you, Dr. Harrison. So now we'll move to 15.1, which is a resolution relating to the bond for the capital project.
Would you like Carol to provide some context for this?
That would be great.
Basically, the voters approved this, this particular resolution. So now you have to actually authorize us to enter into the actual bonding process and/or the ban, which would be a bond anticipation note, which is what I anticipate doing this first year. And probably the first 2 years, we'll do a ban, and then we'll eventually go to a bond. So in order for me to be able to do that and work with the bond council and the capital markets, this is what you need to do as the first step.
Thank you. Any questions? Can we get a motion to approve the bond resolution?
So moved.
And I believe it requires a roll call vote. So.
Do we have a second?
I still moved.
Yeah.
Second. Yep.
So just call out everybody's name.
Yay.
Yay. Yay.
Yay.
Yay.
Yay.
Yay.
So now we move to our second consent agenda of the evening, which is under section 16. And before we vote on it, are there any questions on any of the items within the consent agenda?
I'm certainly excited and interested to hear about this French class field trip to France. If there could be some initial context. I certainly read through the slides. It includes trips to Paris and Nice. And, I guess who gets to go on this trip? And
Yeah, so essentially, it would be students, obviously, that are studying French. That said, the school has historically opened enrollments upperclassmen first, and as seats remain, they extend the opportunity to other students that are studying French. So they kind of stagger the promotion and enrollment or registration process. Come this fall, we will host a parent information session that not only will our world language department, but our school administration will communicate all related details to students and their families, and we'll hold an information night, much like we did with our recent international trips.
So, because I don't remember this, is it open to, for French students, is it open to just juniors and seniors initially and then sophomores?
Yes, I believe that is how they've done it in the past, yes.
Anything else? And can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Abstain?
Abstaining.
So that takes us now all the way to, yes, I just got to flip there.
Page 42.
So at this point, we want to recognize and accept some donations. We thank the IEF for their grants related to the meditation lab. And then we have, again, another opportunity for community comment, if there are any. Seeing none, our next public meeting, for the time being, is scheduled for Tuesday, August 27th at 6:30 here, but that may be altered depending on summer schedules, but for now, that is the date. And can I get a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing the employment history of particular persons?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. So we'll take a couple-minute